We'll set that stator down. Now we're ready to pull this inner crankcase cover. And when you're doing that, you'll actually pull that impeller off of your shaft there. The shaft is actually your oil pump. I'll show you that here in a little bit. 2 more bolts here on the outside that we needed to remove. And then we should be able to pull that plate off of there. You can grab a mallet, plastic mallet or rubber mallet. Just be careful when you're doing this. You don't damage anything that you shouldn't damage, which is pretty much everything. You don't want to damage anything, I guess. So just don't hit too hard or just don't damage anything. So more oil's coming out because of the way that we're tipping that motor. All right, once you tap on it a couple times, you'll be able to pull that off of there. Now I want to show you something because if you're replacing your impeller here, so we'll take and flip this over. Now what we can do, we can remove this seal here. And that's going to go out this direction. So what I would do is grab a seal or a bearing driver and push it out that way, or you can grab a socket the same size and push it out that way. That's to replace that seal there. If your stator assembly underneath your stator behind there and your flywheel is getting oil in it, it's because of this seal right here. Sometimes these bearings go bad on this crankshaft. That'll allow that seal right there to start leaking. Sometimes those seals just get put in there a little crooked. Sometimes those seals just wear out. And that wasn't the case here. We didn't have any oil in our crankcase, but I would suggest replacing that when you do rebuild your motor. The rebuild kit that we sell will include that seal. Now, some rebuild kits do not include that seal. You want to make sure without a doubt that you get that seal replaced. Otherwise, you're going to be doing this exact same thing, and it is a very, very common problem. So make sure you're replacing that. We're going to keep digging into this motor here. We've got our oil pump here, and you can see what a filthy mess we have there. All right, to get down in here farther, we've got our gears here, and you can see we've got a dot here that we need to line up. There's a couple different gears here I wanted to show you. You've got a dot on this gear here. We've got your crank balancer here, and you want to make sure that your crank balancer and your crankshaft, which is this one, line up in the correct position there. Because this motor has got some serious bottom end issues, we're not able to turn this motor over any farther than what it is here, but these dots should be lined up, and you want to make sure that they are. Otherwise, that motor's not going to spin over. I'll show you how to remove these gears here in a bit, but to start, we're going to remove these 2 13mm bolts here. We'll go ahead and remove those. Keep those together. You'll want to remember which one has the washer on it and which style of washer. This one's a little bit bigger, and that one actually fits down in there. This bolt barely covers that washer there. This one, on the other hand, much larger, thicker washer, will go over top of this smaller gear here. So make sure you know which ones those are. Okay, we've got a spring-loaded gear here, so sometimes it makes it a little more difficult to pull this off. But you can sometimes grab a screwdriver, get in behind there a little bit, just pry it up slightly. This is your cam sprocket gear here. So this is your camshaft behind here. At some point, your lifters are going to start falling out here if you have this motor tipped up like this. So you can remove those at this time, or you can just wait for them to fall out. Or when you're removing your camshaft, they'll kind of pull out, but you do have to allow them to scoot far enough forward to where your cam can just pull out of there. Now that we have that bolt off of there, we can actually pull our oil pump off. We've got Allen bolts down in here that we'll need to remove, and they are just underneath of these gear holes. So get these gear holes in the right position there, and you should be able to do them all 4 at once. So if you need to take your screwdriver, turn that over. Most of the time you can use your motor to turn that over. Okay, this one right here, we're going to do the old Tyson wrench trick here. Now, going back together, and I've showed you this in my rebuild videos, but I like to take something, stick it in there, the bolt the exact same size as that, and that'll straighten out that gear. That'll allow you to line that gear properly, and there's really only one direction that that gear can go on there because of that pin. So you want to make sure that you do have these teeth lined up though before you take and tighten that down. So like I said, what I do, take a bolt a little bit bigger than this and slide it into place there. So I'll use a screwdriver, a punch there, scoot that over, put that in there just slightly, just enough to hold that in position, just long enough so we can get this gear on this cam there. So So now we're going to need our tool again to go ahead and remove these two gears here. So we've got this gear and then as well as our crank gear there. All right, and go ahead and do the exact same thing. A lot of times your pullers, the end of them are too large for that gear to come completely off while that puller is pushing down. So just keep that in mind. This puller here won't slide through that gear. So as soon as it's loosened up, don't keep turning this bolt in, just take and pull that gear off of there. You also, again, have a Woodruff key down there that you can remove. And I would suggest doing that at some point before it falls off of there. And then we're going to do the exact same thing with this gear here, but we'll need much larger bolts there, much longer bolts to remove that one. Right, and take this puller, spin it all the way down, and I'm actually going to use some extremely long bolts here. I'm going to tell you where I got these, and I'll probably even include a link for you guys on where to get these. This is going to be a very, very helpful tip because most places don't have bolts this long, especially your local hardware store or something isn't going to have a bolt like this long in stock. So you guys are going to be stuck if you're doing a quick engine rebuild before you have all the proper tools handy there. So take and run those in again, same exact thing. Run this puller down, make sure it's centered there. Okay, same exact thing, pulled that gear off of there, no issues there. It did take a while. You do want to make sure you're not damaging the end of that crankshaft there. Sometimes what I'll do actually is run that nut down a little ways just to have that on there. And then you can take and, you want it down far enough to where you're not going to damage that nut then. And then you can take and pull that gear off of there. So gear's off now, and now we can remove the oil pump, lift that up. Okay, oil pump is out there. Make sure you got everything out with that. Now we're officially done with this puller here. I think I told you right after the flywheel there we were done with it, but we no longer need that. Each time we did need different bolts there, so keep that in mind. They're not all the same bolts, and I'll try to put a link for those specific bolts. You do want to make sure if you utilize my links below that you give us a thumbs up though. Keep that in mind. We do like our thumbs up. Grab a T30, remove these. You are, without a doubt, going to have to remove these if you're splitting your case. Do not try to split your case without removing these. Will not be possible. Okay, once those are removed, we can take this plate off of there, set that aside. We've got tapered bolts that fit down in there. Make sure you keep those handy so that you can reuse those. You do not want those bolts sticking out farther than that plate there. And now we're actually ready to split that crankcase. This camshaft here we can take and pull up. At this time, we do need to make sure that all of our lifters are out. Otherwise, our lifters are actually going to be holding this cam from sliding all the way out. So if you've got a lifter that's stuck kind of halfway, and sometimes that does happen, maybe work on pulling that out before you remove your camshaft. Otherwise, you can just take and spin your camshaft. You just kind of have to find the correct angle to get that in there. This cam is actually in really, really good condition, especially based on the amount of burnt oil that's in here. This is actually, lobes are in really good condition, and I will do some measuring on here, and I'll show you guys how to measure that, to inspect that. But right at this point, it looks like it's in good condition. Now we're going to take and flip this motor upside down, and we're going to start pulling all those crankcase bolts. All right, flipping